Good evening. How is everybody? How is your Sunday? How's your weekend been? How was your week? Who's here? Oh, Fitz is here. Look. Little unexpected Fitz cameo. Nice. She's been lazy today. Although we did have a pretty good play session. Shout out in the comments if you're here. I always like to know who's around. Hello, Osa. Loyal Pubber. Caleb. I don't remember, Caleb. Have you been here before? I don't remember the name. And it's a kind of unique name. Ida's here. Cool. Morton's here. It's Scandinavian evening in the pub. How are you all doing? I am doing fine. The weather has turned much more positive here. It's been over 20 at some point, pretty much every day for a while. Jeroen is here, fresh back from Poland. Cool. How was your trip, Jeroen? That looked like a pretty epic castle that you posted on the fireside. Nice to see. I am going soon-ish. I am going to Cornwall in the next couple of, in the next month or 6 weeks. Not sure exactly when yet. It's for work. But a friend of mine lives there. We are working together, but we're friends. And he has promised to give me a tour of all sorts of interesting Cornwellian sites like Tintagel. Tintagel I really want to see because it is the castle where King Arthur was conceived in the traditional, like the Mallory version. And it's meant to be really interesting. I don't know how accurate this is to the real castle, but it's kind of out on a kind of a small rock island and has kind of a bridge going over to it from the mainland, making it hard to besiege. Jerome was at a developer conference. Cool. Yeah, one day for sightseeing. I mean, that's the nice thing about traveling for business. If you can get anything like that done, I have in the past traveled a hell of a lot for business. And often it was airport, hotel, office, hotel, airport. Alicia's here. Colton's here. Colton is here. Colton being here reminds me to mention next Saturday, not Sunday, but Saturday, but at the same time as the pub. So 2 p.m. EST, 8 p.m. my time. I will be having a live chat with Evie, the wonderful Evie, and possibly Dan, if Dan from the Black and Blue Collar Reader joins us. We will be doing a live chat about Boy's Life by Robert McCammon. Because Evie and I read it together and finished it a week or two ago. And Dan is reading it right now, but should be finished probably in the next couple of days. He was reading Swan Song while we were reading Boy's Life. But and look who's here.
Hello.
How you doing, Raph?
Cheers. I'm doing good so far.
You look like you got in a fight.
I already had that like last Sunday. It was not a fight. It was me being really stupid and walking into like a metal girder at my gym.
Ah, shit.
Yeah.
It looks worse than last time. I mean, it's not just the forehead; it's the left eye and the nose.
That's from like the punk concert on Friday.
Oh, okay.
So technically, it doesn't count as a fight because it was consensual violence, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, what happens in the mosh pit stays in the mosh pit.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's always a good sign. Like
Yeah.
bruises and scrapes are a good sign of a good concert.
Yeah, definitely.
As
No,
far
I
as
had a
I'm
lot of
concerned.
fun with that.
Yeah, cool. The other thing I wanted to mention before we get into anything else is it's been coming and going with various people for a couple of months. I think Tori and I originally said we wanted to read Lonesome Dove together. And then at some point, Joanna said she wanted to read Lonesome Dove this summer. And Darko also said, yeah, we Lonesome Dove. Cool. So we are doing a read along of Lonesome Dove starting in July. So in the next week, basically. And a number of people have said they will join us as well. There is in the read along section on the Fireside Discord, there is a channel that I added for the Lonesome Dove discussion. If you are interested in reading Lonesome Dove with us, drop by that channel and let us know. And go pick up the cinder block that is Lonesome Dove. It's quite a chunky. I'm reading right now. I'm reading Reaper's Gale, which is like almost as thick as my head, and like looking at this, then I look at Lonesome Dove and I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. it's basically the same size as what I'm reading now, but that size is 12 or 1300 pages. It's massive. So yeah.
Yeah, I haven't read Lonesome Dove. I know a lot of people think it's like one of the best westerns to read, and I'm like, I don't know. It's a western.
Yeah, but it's I've heard first of all, I've heard almost universal praise for it.
Yes.
Like a number of people have said it's their favorite book ever, and everybody else has said, damn, it was awesome at least.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people were also people who were like, hey, I've never read a Western and I'm not interested and I don't really get into it. And Lonesome Dove was the exception. So I'm really looking forward to it. I am totally into Westerns, like the movies. I know you could probably spontaneously give an hour-long lecture about colonialism and wiping out the indigenous peoples and all of the things that have to do with the Western genre. Even being aware of that, I like Westerns. And some of the more modern ones take apart the genre a little bit more as well. And you end up with much more anti-hero kind of characters and not glorifying these guys who are basically murderous thugs. But yeah, no, I love Westerns, but I've never read anything I would call a Western.
I mean, technically, sort of, almost, Blood Meridian counts as a Western, I guess.
Yeah, from what I've heard. And
you haven't read that one?
No,
I thought you
had. I haven't.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, that's the one I have read.
And people also, what is it? Red Country by
Joe Abercrombie.
Jabbercrombie.
I mean, that one is definitely trying to tell a Western story in a fantasy world, just as like, the heroes is telling a war story in.
Yeah, I mean, for what I've heard, Joe himself has very directly said that Red Country is inspired by Blood Meridian.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but I haven't read that one either. And the closest thing I would say to a Western that I've actually read on paper is The Dark Tower, which is anything but just a Western. Certainly has heavy Western influence.
It definitely borrows from the trappings of the Western.
Absolutely. It looks like a Western, but it doesn't quite quack like a Western.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like Blood Meridian is sort of like the I mean, obviously it takes place in the West, but I think like the way it works is very much like sort of like your post-Western or like a deconstruction of the Western in a
Yeah.
lot of ways.
Yeah, like Clint
And
Eastwood's.
again, it's McCarthy. He deconstructs like everything he does.
Yeah, it's his thing. Alicia ordered a copy of Lonesome Dove yesterday. Awesome, Alicia. Well done.
Just check. The audiobook is 36 hours long, and apparently there's a volume 2 and a volume 3 of the Lonesome Dove saga, whatever that means.
Yeah, there are Lonesome Dove is like the book everybody knows, but there are 2 more.
Yeah, Streets of Laredo and something else that I already forgot again. And like,
yeah, me too. Streets of
but they
Laredo
get shorter.
And yeah, well, it's not hard to be shorter than Lonesome Dove.
Tell that to Mr. Sanderson.
Yeah. Joe Byrne says, with Raph on, the image is leaning a little to the left.
Yeah, my camera was kind of twisted, and I hope I have adjusted it by now.
Okay.
Because like, I have like an external webcam, so sometimes when something hits like the cable, it twists around the camera.
It's not level just because your
laptop is in front of me.
Laptop is level. Yeah. Cool. Oh man.
So, what have you been reading after finishing Boy's Life? Oh yeah, right. You said Reaper's Gale.
Yeah. No, I'm. Okay. Joe was actually just making a bad political joke. He says.
Oh yeah.
Well. Your camera was fine. Yeah. No, I've been reading Reaper's Gale. I've been binging Lost, the TV show.
Okay. I mean, technically, Reaper's Gale has parts that could probably also sort of count as a Western.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, parts.
The sort of plot line could potentially does certainly have elements of a Western, or at least of things that happened in the West that no one wants to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. Ida asks, Clip is growing on you, isn't he? Ida, Silchus Ruin has been growing on me. Not as a likable character. He's still really annoying.
Dickhead.
But he is badass. He is super badass, which is, I think, more what Ida said in the past, not necessarily that he's Mr. Likable. Clip, as soon as Clip appeared on the page, I thought, Mr. Ruin, could you please double sword this guy? Clip is so irritating. Constantly, in every way, just irritating. And I mean, it's also so clear from the very beginning where it's going with Clip.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you meet Clip and you're like, this guy is going to screw them.
Yeah.
Like, no question. This guy is going to screw him.
He's a dickhead, but he's a well-written dickhead, is how I would say.
Yeah, no, I mean, like if the intention is to create a character that's annoying, Erickson did an extremely good job. No question. I'm with you. Also, Clip is awful. Yes. Yeah. Anyway, I'm reading Reaper's Gale, and it's interesting. It occurred to me at some point, and I posted on the Discord to see what other people thought. Reaper's Gale felt at some point to me like it was the fastest scene switching Malazan book, like at least in the first half, which is a whole bunch of setup of like 8 or 10 different storylines. It like some of the sections are a page, and then it switches to another scene, which is totally somewhere else with totally different characters, and it's kind of crazy. Sometimes it makes your head spin. I keep, like, each time one of these scenes starts, I start getting into it. It's like, oh, what's going on here? Oh, okay, it's becoming a little clearer. Oh, now we're in another scene. Alicia has decided to join us. How are you doing?
Hello.
Yes, we can see you. We can hear you.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Also, you said that you were reading The Fall of the Kings by Ellen Kushner and Delia Sherman. How is that? I've only read Kushner's, what's it called, Swords Point, which I really enjoyed. So I'd be interested in how this is.
Are you talking to me?
No, I was talking to Osa in the chat because
Okay.
on the questions of what we're all reading, and an
Right,
Alan
right,
Kushner
right.
book was mentioned, and I was surprised because no one ever talks about Alan Kushner.
Oh, I totally missed. I see it. Yeah. Reading a bunch of short stories in The Fall of the Kings by Ellen Kushner and Delia Sherman. Okay. Also, Colton asked me a question. My top 3 favorite characters in Lost, because I am binging Lost right now. I am binging it like a madman.
You didn't watch it originally when it came out?
I watched it originally like
Okay.
week to week on television, but I haven't watched it since then.
Mhm.
And Colton and I have been discussing it on the Discord. He's also a huge Lost fan, but he's watched it like over and over and over again since it came out, and also is too young to have watched it on television when it came out.
I
So
was
he
a
didn't.
teenager when it came out originally.
Yeah, I can't say that. I'm a bit older, and one of the things that's really been striking me watching it in the way I'm watching it now, which is like if I want to watch 5 or 6 or 8 episodes in one evening, I do it. Is it's so cliffhangery so often. I don't know how I survived watching it on television. Like, how did my brain not burst in between episodes? It's crazy. But my 3 favorite Lost characters. One who I think is not particularly popular is probably my main favorite character, and that's Saeed. I like Saeed a lot.
Is he talking about Orientalism a lot?
No, but
and it's the wrong Saeed.
Who's the right Saeed?
Edward Said, the guy who came up with the concept of Orientalism and wrote the book on it.
Don't.
I was making a very stupid joke here.
A very nerdy
that apparently
joke
failed.
that only you could possibly get.
No. I guess we have proven definitely that you're not part of the woke agenda, because otherwise you would have jumped at the mention of post-colonialism and Orientalism.
I first of all, I don't believe, as many woke agenda people seem to believe, that there's only the choice between being woke or a Nazi. I don't subscribe to that, but I'm definitely not part of the woke dogmatic agenda. I actually kind of hate it. But favorite Lost character. So Saeed is an Iraqi who was in the Republican Guard and was a torturer interrogator during the war. I mean, this is all back when the Iraq War was still much more present and relevant. But I love Saeed because he's such a complex character. He's always trying to do the right thing, but he's got the wrong skills. He's got great skills for doing the wrong thing. And it's always a struggle for him to not fall back on, I can get anyone to talk about anything I want, which is like horrible and wonderful character work. I'm also a big fan of John Locke, because he's
the philosopher.
No, I do know who that John Locke is, but the character in Lost is an older man who has had a really sad and pathetic life and has been taken horribly advantage of by numerous people, and has ended up in a wheelchair when his con artist father tried to kill him, and is paralyzed from the waist down. And when he lands on the island, he can walk for some reason, and goes through a real, I think he has the most interesting character arc. He's like one of the characters who changes the most and sort of moves his position and his opinions and his attitudes and everything the most in the whole show. So Saeed, Locke, and I mean, Hurley has to get an honorable mention because Hurley's just like the most likable guy on the island. Yeah. But he's, story-wise, he's actually kind of a boring character, I find.
Yeah.
Not that much interesting happens with Hurley or that involves Hurley, and he's always just sort of there as a secondary background character.
That
but-
humanity still exists. I feel like he's there for that.
he is the comic relief, which is a
Yeah.
little sad sometimes because he's the fat guy,
Yeah.
right? And there are a lot of fat jokes, and I'm not so great about. I'm not so.
It's very of its time in that way.
Yeah, totally. And also the fact that, like, you know, Kate has to get her clothes off as regularly as possible,
Mhm.
but I mean Sawyer as well. Like, any chance to get Sawyer's shirt off, they never miss it.
I mean,
Um,
it is very much late 2000, like early 2000s television in that regard, I think.
Oh yeah.
Not that I've ever seen a single episode of it because, you know, I don't watch TV,
Sure.
or I haven't in like a long time.
Yeah. And maybe, but I would put Hurley as an honorable mention because, like I said, story wise, he doesn't matter that much. I think Sawyer is also super interesting as a character, just because of what he's been through and who it's made him, and his also kind of like Saeed, his struggle to not be who he has been in the past, and not just automatically react like an asshole. I find that really interesting. Joe asked, does it bother you Lost makes no sense, that half the mysteries don't actually mean anything or have a solution? Yeah, I'm blessed with a horrible memory. Well, cursed with a horrible memory. So like watching it now kind of feels like watching it for the first time again. Because when I watched it, it was 20 or over 20 years ago. And I don't remember hardly anything. I mean, I remember vaguely the characters, but I don't really remember the details of the mysteries and what's happening and whatever.
I remember it being one of the last shows that was like appointment television.
Yeah.
Like everybody stopped what they were doing to watch it.
You have to watch Lost every week. Yeah. Yeah. But I don't really remember the show in detail. So I haven't gotten to the point where I'm like, it's annoying that never got explained. I may get to that point. I remember that feeling at the end. I remember watching the finale on television and thinking, what the fuck was that? Are you serious? I hated it. I was super disappointed and annoyed.
That was me with Sopranos. I was pissed.
See, Sopranos I've never watched.
Okay.
I know it's one of those shows that you really should watch, but
yeah,
somehow I missed it on television.
it's so good.
And I live in Germany now, and Raf can expound about like audiobooks and the same problems. Sometimes getting if I wanted to watch The Sopranos in German,
No problem.
Easy.
It's getting it in English.
But getting it in English and not
Okay.
paying like 25 euros for each season,
Holy crap.
even on a streaming service that I'm already subscribed to, like Amazon Prime has a lot of things that you can just watch, and then it has a lot
Right.
of things that you have to pay for.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And Sopranos, for whatever reason, is under the 25 euros a month or 25
I
euros a
wonder
season.
why, because it's not like it just came out or anything. Like the last season was 2000.
No, but I bet it's a licensing deal with
Yeah.
with whoever owns it, where they're like
HBO.
people. Yeah, HBO. So HBO said to Amazon, "We'll give it to you, no problem, but we want money anytime someone watches it because they know that people watch The Sopranos."
Mm.
Even now, like
Yeah.
someone like me would like to sit down and binge the whole thing, or someone who is a big fan would watch it every year, maybe once or whatever, yeah.
Mm.
Daniel says it's basically just Jacob's Ladder. Lost, that is.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and it was the story of the start of J.J. Abrams' mystery box storytelling nonsense. Indeed. Yeah, I mean, what I really do like about it a lot is the character stories. Like, I think the character stories have been done remarkably well. like, and especially with the flashbacks and the flash forwards and the paralleling the two of those, and you kind of get a bit of an idea here, and then there's a twist in the flashback, and that I think that's done really well, and I really enjoy the characters and the character interaction. The mystery stuff is mysterious, and a lot of it doesn't get explained and doesn't make sense, and the only way to put it together is fans had to go to extreme lengths to craft all sorts of bizarre, convoluted theories, but they're only theories because certain things aren't explained in the show. Yeah, I don't know.
And yeah, I agree with Asa that yes, Alan Kushner deserves a lot more hype.
Yeah, it
and,
did.
And Swords Point was really good, and I never went on to reading A Privilege of the Sword and the third one, but I really should, because Swords Point was really cool. And have you read that, Matt or Alicia?
I have not. I know the
No, I
name
haven't.
Ellen Kushner, but I have not read any of it.
Swords Point is fascinating in that it is technically fantasy, but without magic. So you could probably call it like historical. I mean, it's clearly set in a non-real town, that being Riverside and whatnot, and it's sort of like Renaissance, sort of Italy style with duelists and all that stuff, and it's got like a queer romance going on, and yeah, but no magic, or almost no magic. So it's
So it's kind of historical fiction, but in a secondary world.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
And it's just really, really well done. And
all right. Cool. Yeah, I'm into the Renaissance stuff. I love that period.
Then let me recommend you another book that is coming out in 2 weeks.
Uh-huh.
That being Navola, the new novel by Paolo Bacigalupi.
I've been wanting to read Bacigalupi just because the name's so cute.
The thing is, Bacigalupi, the first two big adult novels that he wrote, The Wind-Up Girl and The Water Knife, are a lot of things, but cute is not one of them.
No, but Bacigalupi is such a cute name.
It is.
It's a fun name to say.
It sounds like an Italian cartoon character or something.
Yeah.
Bacigalupi.
Yeah, there's that. But like both The Wind-Up Girl and The Water Knife are very, very good books. Sadly, BookTube has kind of never talked about them.
I've never heard of them.
They're sort of, I think Wind-Up Girl won a Hugo or something. It definitely was a big deal when it came out in like the mid-2000s.
I've heard of Wind-Up Girl for sure.
And it's sort of climate science fiction. It's set in Thailand. It's very much about like gene patents on different agriculture, like crops and seeds and stuff like that, and how global corporations are basically squeezing the global south with those gene patents and stuff like that. It's very much about those kind of topics, which are obviously a big deal back then and are still a big deal, although fewer people talk about it now, and it very much deals with that. So it's a very dark kind of thing about corruption in Thailand and dealing with that, and different like plagues, because the way that those genes are, like the gene patents are enforced, is that they sort of the corporations unleashed like sort of different crop plagues that sort of destroy illegally sown seeds and fruits and whatnot, and those obviously mutated and run rampant, and then people are dying and stuff like that. It was very, very dark and very angry for its time, and it's well, very few things have changed since then, so it's still very relevant. And then The Water Knife is
I mean, we're not quite that far yet, but I mean, I know that the gene engineered seed is a real problem for farmers, because what happens is they get one big industrial agricultural plantation happening, and seed spreads automatically on its own, and then the neighboring farms all get sued because they're growing gene modified crops, even though they may not even know it.
And the second one that he wrote, The Water Knife, was about water shortage and water rights in the American Southwest, which is definitely not rooted in any real problems that people along the Colorado River
No.
have at all.
No,
Mm.
no. I mean, the Grand Canyon has still got a very healthy river flowing through it,
Yeah,
and
yeah. It
all
does
that
rely
stuff.
heavily on Cadillac Desert, which is one of those books that is so incredibly depressing to read. If you want to read a really, really depressing nonfiction book that will make you really, really angry, there's a Cadillac Desert by Mark Reisner he wrote that in like the
Cadillac
80s.
Desert. Never heard of it.
It's basically a history of like water management in the American Southwest, like dam building, river
Yeah.
water rights, and all of that stuff, and how it's absolutely not sustainable at all. And he wrote that like the first edition in like the 80s, and very much predicted everything that has happened since. And it's
Yeah. I mean, like it's always seemed to me like the water from about a third of the country, goes west to California.
Mhm.
And like everything in between. I mean, it was already a desert, didn't have much water to start with, but it's even worse.
Yeah, but and Reisner links that and that's the interesting part. He links that to the ideas of manifest destiny and certain ideas of making using the desert as sort of like an expression of ultimate will and possibly even God's will in a lot of ways for stuff that it was not made for, which is all that agriculture you do in like Utah and whatnot. Where it's like, yeah, okay, that stuff was never sustainable.
No, I've traveled a lot in the Southwest. I had a period where I hiked and camped all over the Southwest for about a month, and in Utah and Arizona and New Mexico and all over the place. And everywhere I went, I kept thinking, why are people here?
Yeah.
Like this doesn't, you'd be driving through sand and rock and blistering heat for hours, and then you come to a city. And you're like, there is no sensible reason that there's a city here. Why did someone decide to stop here and develop a city? And how was it even possible? Yeah, no, it's. I mean,
like
and I visited a lot of the pueblos, like the native pueblos, and those make sense because first of all, they're built into the landscape, like they built with either mud or into cliffs and stuff like that, and it's a much more sort of feels like, okay, these guys know how to actually keep a place cool naturally. But they also are all pretty small. I mean, like a sensible size, like a couple hundred people can live like that in the desert without much impact. But Santa Fe, I mean, Santa Fe is a gorgeous city. I loved Santa Fe, but like bumping into Santa Fe, it just felt like, why is this here? Albuquerque, even because of how ugly it is, I don't think it should be there. Albuquerque is just a big Western grid. It's horrible. It's like the number one example of a city with no personality, in my experience.
And a lot of like the water knife is set in Phoenix, which is another one of those cities that shouldn't be there.
Phoenix is also exactly.
And it kind of deals with like refugees from like the South, but also from parts of Texas, because Texas is already like completely destroyed by the drought and all of that stuff. It's really good. It's really dark. Then he has written together with Tobias S. Buchel, he wrote the Tangled Lands, like collection of like interlinking sort of like short stories set in this magical kingdom, which is very much an allegory for climate change as well, because you have magic, and magic makes these brambles like cover the country. Like you have like thickets of brambles that are covering the land, and it's the more magic you use, the more it kind of starts doing that, and then it kind of deals with like ways of maybe either avoiding using magic or finding a way to destroy the brambles again, and it kind of deals with those things in like different short stories that are all set in this world and show like perspectives of different people engaging with that, and it's really interesting stuff.
Okay.
And he's putting out a new one which is described as Renaissance Venice meets The Godfather meets Game of Thrones, and
sounds good. Yeah, I would read that.
I'm in.
Thornall apparently bought the Illuminatus trilogy and is starting it today. I assume inspired by Raph.
I applaud your courage. It's a lot of fun.
But it's also some really, really weird shit and doesn't always make sense.
Well, it's not supposed to make sense. That's kind of the point, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not saying that that's a mistake, but it can be difficult on a reader.
Yeah, I
It's
can
not
see
always
that.
easy to read. Yeah.
It's I mean, obviously I had a lot of fun with my recent reread, especially because at this point I know I've read enough stuff to get a lot of the references, so I get all the weird jokes that are in there, and you
Yeah.
know.
I read it when I was in my early 20s, I think.
Yeah.
And I certainly was not educated enough to get a lot of the references, but some of them I certainly did.
Yeah.
It's definitely a book with lots of references. I'd
Yeah.
love to see Max Garfield take on Illuminatus, because he has a
Yeah.
habit of writing like 3-meter long lists of
Posts.
references from books he reads. Did I see, Alicia, that you are reading Baker?
Yeah.
You just brought a book over. I thought it was,
A
yeah.
friend, Epic, who we had a joint discussion with once,
Yeah.
recommended it to me, so I bought it, and I'm scared.
Which one?
Darkness That Comes Before
The
by
Darkness That Comes Before.
R. Scott Baker.
I'm scared.
What exactly are you scared of?
Yeah, that's the big question here.
Well, okay, because I don't want to get you like demonetized or anything. Like, I'm just concerned about like if there's a huge amount of like sexual assault
In the
for no
first
reason.
one, there's yes and
That
no.
really bugs me when it's just like when it's used as like a plot device for a character.
In that regard, I think you're safe in the first one mostly.
Okay.
There is certainly a lot of sexual violence, and it becomes very key to part of the story later on. But it's oftentimes in a more like almost like alienated, like psychedelic way. Sometimes also there's a lot of like sexual violence that is man on man sexual violence. It's
So just read it slowly is what I'm hearing. Okay.
Definitely read it slowly. It's very explicitly violent in a lot of ways, both like physical violence, sexual violence, some psychological violence as well. I have a lot of problems with Baker in a lot of ways, but yeah.
I'm curious. Like, if I bounce off of it, I bounce off of it, but I'm curious.
See, I would be more. I've also got that on my shelf somewhere, and I've been postponing reading it forever. The thing that not intimidates me, but worries me more is that it's, from what I've heard, extremely nihilistic.
Ooh,
and
yeah.
I can do that enough on my own. Like, my mind does not need more nihilism put in it.
Yeah.
I prefer, I mean, Malazan is pretty dark, but Malazan at its core essentially has a positive message.
Yes.
Right? It's pointing towards better. You know, it's the whole story. It's always people are struggling to do something that's better. So it's the opposite of nihilistic. It's very optimistic in a way.
I just have to make sure I'm in the right headspace for this.
Yeah, totally. Like. I mean, I've been having that with I haven't read any Malazan in a long time. I sort of took a break in my reread, and I've been finding that reading this, what I did, for example, with Sun Eater, which was basically reading a bunch every day, nonstop, one book to the next, boom, 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 boom. I've just run into, I can't do that with this. You know?
No, that was I just finished.
It's changing scenes and characters.
Man by Ralph Ellison, and
yeah,
it was. I had to stop multiple times. I was like,
yeah,
all right, I need a minute.
I read that a long time ago. Yeah, it's not a quick beach read.
No.
And Malazan, there's just like, there's so, especially in this particular book, I was saying it earlier on, the first half of this book is, I haven't even counted them, but easily 10 different storylines with different characters in different places.
So take notes.
And it's switching back and forth between those every 1 to 5 pages.
Oh, Jeez.
Like it's
That's
really,
it.
really it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm having to like, okay, I just read 2 chapters. That's enough for today. I have the
Now,
time
which-
to read more, but
Which book in the series are you reading? Is that book 4?
this is book 8.
8. Okay.
Yeah.
Which one?
I have book 1.
Reapers.
Reaper's Gate is book 7.
Oh, book 7. Yeah, exactly.
Toll
Yeah.
the Hounds is
Toll
book
the
8.
Hounds is 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, what
7.
Joe
Yeah.
says, that's part of my problem with the Darkness. I've only read the first trilogy. I've heard that the second part, the 4 books of Aspect Emperor, are different and go into wilder directions. But the first trilogy is all about free will doesn't exist, the world is doomed, and it's very. It has this weird early 2000s edgy internet atheist vibe to it that I really didn't like about it.
That is a very, very. I
But
haven't
you
read
guys know
Baker.
what I mean, right?
I haven't
Yeah.
read Baker. I don't know anything about in detail about Baker, but you just gave a very descriptive description. Like
That
I
was-
know exactly what you mean.
And that's
Just by
that's
saying
that's kind of like one of the main things that annoyed me about it, because I fundamentally disagree with Baker on that philosophical level, because I don't think his assessment of like there is no free will because it's all just a machine. I'm not a hardcore naturalist, is my point, and I don't think it's a viable position. And he hammers it home with like all that stuff. And the second issue that I have with the first trilogy is that it's basically a fantasy retelling of the First Crusade. I think, yeah, it's the First Crusade, and
It's a thick one.
I guess I've spent too much time at university in courses about crusades and stuff for me to ignore a lot of the stuff. And the way he describes is totally not fantasy. Byzantine Empire is, to bring back Said, very Orientalist in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Playing up all the stereotypes of them being, treacherous and effeminate and decadent and stuff like that. And it's like,
Right.
For someone who's, at least tried to get a PhD in philosophy, from someone like that, I'm expecting more, because I'm someone who tried to do a PhD in philosophy, and I know I can do better. So why can't Baker?
Joe, I don't know if Joe is dissing me or Baker here, but he says anyone conflating nihilism with an absence of free will strikes me like a frat boy who's misunderstood the 1 or 2 philosophy classes he's taken and thinks he's deep. From my perspective, because I was the one that said nihilism, that's just kind of what I think I've heard about it. I don't know, because I haven't read it. I don't have any opinion myself.
I thought Joe was
on the
talking
books.
about Baker in that regard, because he does
Yeah.
kind of fit Baker.
Yeah.
Hey, Kadia.
But she arrived just in time for Raph to insult her. So you're an edgy internet atheist, Chadia? Mark Lawrence's Broken Empire is also from that time, very edgy, early 2000s
Yeah.
grimdark.
That's why I
I
haven't picked it up.
I so DNF'd the first book. Oh my god.
I read the
I
entire
don't think Mark
trilogy.
Lawrence is
It's
for me.
bad. I've read the entire trilogy. I think. So here's the thing. I fundamentally find Mark Lawrence, despite, I know he's done a lot for like self-publishing with the SP, with Spiffbo, whatever it's called. I fundamentally find him incredibly insufferable and unlikable.
As a
And
person.
as a person, like whenever he writes something in a post or whatever, he's public persona. Obviously, if you haven't met the man, so
I
his
like
public
him.
persona
I
is
like him a
terrible.
lot because he has a Maine Coon that looks a lot like Fitz,
Oh,
but is male, so like 50% bigger. No,
But that's
I
the
don't-
point.
I
So
don't
you
have any
like
opinion
Mark
about him.
Lawrence's cat, is what you're saying.
Yeah, actually, I like Mark Lawrence's cat, and like anybody who has a beautiful cat, you just automatically want at least to think that person's nice. But that's why I have a beautiful cat. Otherwise,
Yeah.
people wouldn't like me.
I'm a dog person. Cats don't like me. I don't know why. They never have.
Yeah,
They just
I'm-
don't like me. I've accepted it.
I'm too lazy to be a dog person. I don't have to take my cat out, so
I've always had a dog. This is the longest time period I've gone with.
I
it.
love dogs. I would actually love to have a dog. I've always said that I will probably never live in a place where having a dog would be good for the dog.
That's
You
what
know,
that's what this
like,
is. I
I
don't
live in
feel
a small
comfortable.
flat
Yeah,
and in the middle of a city, a big city,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
I
I
don't
live
want to
in the
do that
woods
to a
and
dog.
there's
Yeah.
no fence, there's no backyard, no
If
nothing.
I lived in a place like that, I would so have a dog. I'd probably
Yeah.
have 2 Irish wolfhounds.
That's what I'm actually funny enough. I was looking. There's a program that adopts dogs out but trains them to be service animals, and that's kind of what I
Right.
need.
Right.
And so I was looking at like because I need a dog that would be able to like handle my weight if I fell. I would need a bigger dog like an Irish
Right.
Wolfhound.
Yep.
Something like that.
Yeah. I used to have a dog. I want a dog again because at the end of the day, I want my pet to be slightly less intelligent than me, and that works with dogs. It does not necessarily work with cats.
It depends on the breed.
Yeah,
It
whatever
depends
you
on the
do,
breed.
whatever you do, do not get a Dalmatian.
No.
No, I would
Dalmatians
take
are
I would
the
take a
dumbest
Labrador.
fucking dogs ever. Oh my god, Dalmatians are stupid. Unbelievable. I grew up like in high school. I had a friend who had two Dalmatians. One was the typical Dalmatian, what you think of, the thin greyhound looking, but white with black spots.
Yeah.
Her name was Daisy, and her favorite thing to do was run full speed into closed glass sliding doors.
My bulldog
Like,
did this,
Over and over
Did the
and
same
over
thing.
and over,
Yeah.
like multiple times in one day. And the other one was Sparky. Sparky was a rescue dog in that my friend's dad found him 90% dead on the side of the road, took him home and nursed him to health. Sparky was chunky. He was a scary looking dog, but he was white with black spots. So he was part Dalmatian, part something.
Mm.
And
But
Sparky would eat anything.
Yeah.
Like literally anything. We were eating fried chicken and we'd throw him pieces of chicken and then we'd wipe our hands and throw him the napkins.
Oh,
And
geez.
he would just eat the napkins, he would eat the bucket. Like
His poor
and not
stomach.
suffer for it. Like he was never sick, you know. He was
So what you're saying is that that basically those 2 Dalmatians were basically one Labrador together, eats everything and runs into everything because they can
That's
get
what
away
it
with
sounds like.
yeah.
Because I've seen Labradors run into glass doors again and again. The thing is, like with Labradors, because they're massive, they're like they can get away with a lot of that stuff because some doors will just open when they run against it.
Yeah, not sliding glass doors.
No.
Like Daisy, she as soon as she saw anything outside, you'd have to try and get up faster than she could run and open the door for her. Otherwise, she'd brain herself on the glass.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, dumb. So
That's
dumb.
a good point there, Jerome.
probably really sweet though.
Maybe Kadia's cats are in fact a divers and not just a cat.
A cat divers. Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know what a divers is, it's a Malazan thing. It's
I was gonna ask.
it's like a single creature.
It's a hive mind
that
shapeshifter. So it's one.
manifests as multiple animals.
Okay.
So there's one in there, the Grillus, who
Grillin.
is, or yeah,
bunch
Grillin,
of
who's
rats.
hundreds of rats, but they're all driven by one consciousness. And they can shapeshift into
I don't.
other
right.
things.
Mm.
Yeah, there are other ones. There are like a
Ugh.
group of wolves or whatever, but the Grillin is the scariest one. Grillin is just hundreds and hundreds of rats.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a bunch of these, and it's a really cool concept. So when with the hive mind cats, I thought maybe
could be a divers.
it could be.
And spiders. Yeah.
Oh, spiders. Yeah.
We have a lot of bears and cows where I'm at. So.
This is true what Jerome says. Matt and Raph read Malazan and now they look like this. Don't do it, kids. Yep. Exactly.
I only have book 1.
Makes you hairy and old and your face gets bashed up.
Yeah, it's pretty much what happens.
Yeah.
The best part was like I went to that I went to that punk show and it was all fun and games. It was really good. I even, got back on the train, got myself back like all the way to Marburg, which is like a 3-hour train ride in the middle of the night, right? And at 2 a.m. in the morning, I leave the train. It's all fine. And at the exit of the train station, some random girl stumbles over my stick, snaps it clean in half, yells at me for tripping her up, and then walks off. And I'm standing at 2 a.m. in a not exactly large town with no stick.
Oh no.
Oh, damn. That kind of
Luckily,
sucks.
I found some people that actually came from the same punk show with the same train, and they're like, "Hey, no problem, we'll help you. We'll get you to a taxi," which involved like a 2-hour detour to a pub. But
Yeah.
it's. I don't know about the Harrier, Ida, but you definitely get older while reading Malazan. That's just like because it's long books.
It just takes time. Yeah. If your profile photo on the fireside is anything to go by, Ida, you're not old and you're not hairy. But you have elf ears, I think. Anyway. Yeah, but she says still worth it. Anyway. Yeah. No, it's totally worth it. I am so into it at the moment. And
That's
look who else
another
is joining
series
us.
that completely intimidates me. I'm just like, oh, that's a lot.
It's
I know. It's me. So shocking.
Hey, Breton.
it's Britano.
Alicia, you
Alicia.
don't need to be intimidated by
No.
the Malazan Book of the Fallen. It's
I
a
was just gonna
really
say that.
easy read.
Jeez, Rafi, all right? Getting a fight or something?
We just went over this.
Oh,
Missed it.
I went to a punk concert.
oh, that makes sense. You can just leave it there.
It was fun.
Yeah, Alicia, do not be intimidated. I mean, it's the thing I always think is funny is, first of all, a lot of people are intimidated by long series.
Yeah.
And I always find that kind of hilarious because reading this book, it's a really thick book, yes. And you look at it and you think, oh my God, but it's like reading 2 books. I mean, 2 other kind of normal sized books, 500.
I'm
600
complaining
page
about
books.
that, but I'm reading this.
Yeah. So shut up.
Yeah, I think that's like
and I mean-
the only thing where I'm like, when it comes to Malazan Book of the Fallen, for example, for new readers, I'm like, you need to have sort of the stamina to go through like books of this length. It doesn't matter what books, but you need to have that stamina. And a lot of people just starting out with like reading outside of school often don't have like the stamina to read like a 1,000-page book.
Like
Which I understand.
right out of college, me would never have read Jonathan Strange or anything like that.
I wouldn't have read Malazan probably 10, 20 years ago. It just wouldn't have been my thing. But
That's why I'm waiting until next year.
There-
My reading list is stacked this year.
yeah, like you have unique problems, Britton. Yeah, I mean, like this is a really thick book, but like I said, it's the length of 2 normal fantasy books. So if you can read
Does the
2 normal
binding
fantasy
hold up
books, you
because
can
they
read-
are so thick?
that's been read
Okay.
once already.
Okay, so the binding does hold up.
Yeah. I mean, there's also trade paperback format, and which is easier to get in America, I believe. There's also hardbacks, but they're much harder to find.
Yeah.
But these mass market paperbacks, I hate them personally because I don't like really thick mass market.
Me either.
You know, it's just in the hand. It feels clumsy. It feels annoying. And now Jerome is going to come in and go, "Oh, it's the perfect format." But
I read them constantly. Like I'm reading this, but
yeah,
it's only.
I don't mind a thin mass market.
Yeah, these are.
But
This
the
is
really
only 300
thick,
pages.
chunky mass markets, they kind of annoy me. But it's the only format I can get. But you shouldn't be intimidated. I've encouraged many people at this point to read Malazan, and a lot of them have been chatting with me, and they all started out like you. They're all like, it's really long, and I've heard it's
And the
complicated.
fandom seems
and,
very like, if you don't understand something, they're going to jump down your throat, kind of thing.
Well, it
that's gonna be the
depends
other
on where you encounter the fandom. There other people say
Don't go on Facebook.
don't go on Facebook. Exactly.
Beyond just a general Facebook madness, there are like 2 big Malazan groups on Facebook, and they can be very, very toxic, particularly toxic.
Yeah, but my experience, and most people I know who've read it in the last few years' experience, is that the fandom, the people that they've interacted with, have been super helpful, super encouraging, super careful about spoilers, and just extremely happy that someone's getting into their thing, you know?
Yeah.
Which is what fandoms should be, but often aren't. But generally, the main thing I think can be challenging for some people is you will not know exactly what's going on all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
It takes a while for some things to be explained. Erickson,
But do you get answers to the questions though eventually?
No,
not
necessarily.
Many of them, yes.
Okay.
Many of them.
Okay.
And
I don't mind being lost as long as I get answers somewhat.
yeah,
You get a lot of answers, but there are definitely things where there are no answers, and when you ask both Erickson or Esselmont, they will say like, "Well, we never thought about that."
yeah.
Could be.
There are some big mysteries in the world that remain mysterious, but there are a number of things, like in the first book, there are a number of things you'll read about, I don't know, how magic works or political stuff that's going on, and it'll probably be confusing to start with, because Erickson, and this is one of the things I love about him, unlike a lot of fantasy authors, he doesn't sit you down with a wise old man and give you 10 pages of explanation. Right? He doesn't do these info dump kind of scenes.
Yeah. Okay.
He has things happening in the world, and if the characters you're following don't know what's going on, then neither do you. Right?
Okay, so it's purposeful.
Yeah, it's totally purposeful. I mean, he's a master author. He's very, very good. None of it's an accident, you know.
I think I got really lucky because I had already read Black Company twice before I got to Malazan, because at the time there were audiobooks for Black Company and not for Malazan, but I knew that Malazan was supposed to be sort of similar to Black Company. I love Black Company, so when they finally became available in audio, I was like, hell yeah. And Black Company is a very good introduction because it also doesn't give you any information about anything.
I only read book 1 of Black Company.
Black Company is kind of a good starter set for Malazan. Malazan is a lot more than Black Company, in a lot of ways. I mean, it certainly
I didn't like the writing of Black Company, but I like the story, if that makes sense. The way the writing was, reading it physically, I was like, this is hurting my eyeballs. Like, I can't. Okay. The short sentences were like, I'm like,
that is very, very Glenn Cook style thing. That is not necessarily a Steven Erikson style thing.
That's why I was like, I don't know, with some of these bigger fantasies and how much people fuck up.
And
like,
to be fair, it's not necessarily a Glenn Cook thing either, because it's very deliberately, like with the first 3 books, it's very deliberately a Croker thing.
That's true. That's true. It's
because when
it style associated with a specific character.
Yeah. When it shifts to different narrators, the style changes, and there's even like a scene in, like, I think She's the Darkness, where the then chronicler of the Black Company, the analyst, gets yelled at by the analyst of the first book about how he's talking way too much and being way too
flowery. Yeah.
I
no,
really
it is a very conscious style thing. It's not like Glenn
I
Cook
like sections of it because I have like members of my family who were ex-military, so like a lot of them talk like that. So that didn't bother me. It was like, I hate to go back to this, but like some of the treatment of the women in the first book, I was like, no.
Yeah,
I'm good.
I mean, that's also one of the nice things that I think about Malazan is, and I'd not thought of this until I saw an interview with Erickson. Where he just sort of very matter-of-factly said, in a world where magic is this powerful and anyone can do magic, how could you have sexism? Because the crazy powerful magic could be used by this woman you don't like or want to treat badly or whatever, and she could have demons rip your head off. You know,
see, that I can get behind. I can get behind.
I mean, in the first book, one of the starter characters, because there are a lot of that's the other thing that's maybe a little disorienting for a lot of people in Malazan. There is no main character.
Okay.
Right? There is no
Okay.
one main character. There are many characters, and you follow
There's
them.
10 books though. There's no one.
There are characters that go through all of the books,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
there's nobody. There's no chosen one. There's no quest group.
Yeah.
There's no fellowship. There are a bunch of different people doing a bunch of different things that are all related, but there's no one person or small group of people where you say, oh, this is my main character group. There'll be one book in the 10 where there are no characters you've ever seen before in the whole book.
Yeah.
And then they come back in the book after that or whatever. It's like there are it's interesting women's perspective. Edith said Erickson writes women better than any male author I've ever read. Better
That's
than many
another one of my
female authors.
questions is if he was writing it as like grossly as men do and did back then.
No.
I think like
hate
one
it.
important. Yeah. No. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know how to write women well because how would I? I think like one thing that makes Erickson good at it is that he's got women from all walks of life and also all different age groups. Like a lot of fantasy only has like either ugly old women or beautiful young women and nothing in between. And Erickson has a lot of like very realistic people, and I think that's one of the things that makes it work so well.
Yeah.
And as for like the treatment of women in Black Company,
At least in
obviously
book one. I'm not saying
the point is,
I only read book one.
yeah, and I think it's deliberate because it's very much. I mean, these are the bad guys, right?
Yeah.
There is. It's not condoning sexism. It's showing sexism and how misogyny and violence against women and so forth happens in war, which is very realistic. And I don't think.
Yeah.
I totally understand that it can be really rough to read. No excuse for that, but it's not condoning. And Glenn Cook does have some very interesting and very strong female characters throughout the series, and does some really interesting stuff there, all the way up to having transgender characters and being incredibly good about it for something written in like the late 90s.
One of those like big bind up thingies. So I have I still want to continue. Just book one, I was like, please tell me the writing style changes because my brain can't take this.
Yeah, also makes a good point. I mean, there are definitely some horrible things done to women in Malazan. No question. There are societies in Malazan that do have sexism. But overall, there are a lot of very strong female characters that are absolutely on the same level in every way as a lot of the male characters. There are some super powerful, crazy, terrifying women. There are female gods or goddesses, I guess, that are also
Matt, is it a sin to have powerful female characters?
I don't know if I get the joke.
You should. You're reading Reaper's Gale now, and you'll get it even more in the last two books.
I'm just trying to think of
your wheels turning.
It's very obvious, Matt. Have you heard about a character called Sin?
Oh, I haven't gotten to Sin yet in Reaper's Gale. Yeah.
Okay.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I know what you mean. Now it clicked.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, Chadio says also this is very obvious when violence towards women and sexism is in the books. It's clearly being presented as a bad thing.
Yeah,
like there is no glorification.
That's my biggest problem with a lot of fantasy is like the bad guy is just a bad guy because he does horrible things to women. Like
that's definitely not the case in Malazan. In fact, in Malazan, this is one of the other big things that I love about it. It's really hard to hold on to your idea of who the bad guy is.
There are like one or two really clearly bad people.
There are a couple of unredeemed bad guys, but mostly the bad guy that you meet at the beginning, you start to understand in the middle, and by the end you're like, was he that bad though? I mean, he did some bad things.
10-gallon gray hats on.
Yeah,
Calor did nothing wrong.
Calor is one of the ones that seems kind of unredeemed to me. But
you've never read like Blood and Bone, have you?
No.
that one might give you very specific new insight.
I know that the stuff outside of the 10
I keep getting it. I thought
relativizes
Keller was the
stuff.
character from the Baker novel.
No, that's Kelhus.
Oh, Keller.
Kelhus.
Kelhus. Also, Thornall, I don't think it is possible to compare Garden of the Moon with the Illuminatus books. They're difficult in different ways.
Aha, okay.
I mean,
I see that.
like, yeah, Thornall asked if it's more difficult. I would say Illuminatus is way more like a Thomas Pynchon novel, but like the crust punk version of a Thomas Pynchon novel. So there's a lot of deliberate contradictions and paranoia going on.
Very strange conspiracies all over the place.
Yeah, very explicit, over-the-top sexuality from time to time, just for shock value. That kind of stuff. So it's more like
is predicted based on a guy's boners.
Not that, but there's certainly some very interesting things happening around sexuality in this book.
I haven't read Gravity's Rainbow, but I know about that.
Yeah, so I would say Illuminatus is far more like, I don't know, Crying of Lot 49, but in crust punk.
Yeah. Yeah, Gravity's Rainbow, I just couldn't. Hello, Rogue. Rogue's a bit late, but what's crack, Rogue?
What the hell's that?
That's a good point, Daniel. Not a lot of trans characters in fantasy.
Yeah.
I don't think there are any that are explicitly trans in Malazan.
Yes and no. In what's it called? In the Carcanis trilogy, very explicitly.
Okay.
But you haven't read that.
No.
So, but there's certain characters in Carcanis that have a different gender in Carcanis than they have in the Malazan Book of the Fallen.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I can't think of trans characters in anything I've read. Chadia says Realm of the Elderlings, but there is no explicitly trans about that character. It's more of a ambiguous character who can present as male or female.
Yeah, I would call the Fool non-binary or gender fluid.
Yeah, the Fool
kind of like
is
Orlando in Shakespeare, like the Orlando book with Virginia Woolf. How
possibly
they die as the male character, but they come back as a female.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, not like that. It's just a character who is presented throughout the series in different genders.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
Gotcha.
there is no explicitly they changed their gender. They're just presenting differently.
Okay.
Yeah, what the Rogue said, yes. I mean, the culture is all about changing your gender whenever you feel like it.
Changing your entire identity and world whenever you feel like it.
Yes. Technically, there are obviously trans characters. In theory, there's at least one trans character in The Wheel of Time. And it obviously leads to terrible transphobia because we're still talking Robert fucking Jordan.
Yeah.
And
I'm thinking of the counselor, but the counselor is definitely a woman. She's just bisexual.
Yeah.
She's definitely wasn't a man and doesn't become a man. She is a she for sure. But,
Okay.
The Ringspawn trilogy, there's a female character who identifies as man, but it's because the society is extremely sexist and being raised as man was so he could rule. Okay.
And that's the thing that I found so fascinating and interesting in the Black Company, because those were like early 2000s books, and there's this one character, and they join the Black Company, and they're relatively young, and at some point he someone sees him pee somewhere, and they're like, oh, you're actually a woman, and then they talk about it and why he dressed as a man when he entered the Black Company. It's like, well, I thought I had to be a guy to join the army, and there's like, no, you can be a woman in the Black Company, that's no big deal. And then they talk about it, and it's like, no, I prefer to stay a guy, and then that's that. And you know, for something written by an old white dude in the early 2000s, that's I don't know, just like done really well.
Pretty progressive, yeah. Yeah, I mean, in Malazan, the mostly in most places in the world of the books, the lack of sexism is so normal. It's almost shocking to us. Like the military is, I don't know if it's 50-50 split, but like women are serving
even.
right next to men all the time and not treated any differently. And they're just, and some of the badass soldiers are women. And, you know, it's some of the crazy, powerful sorcerers are women. You know, it's a totally normal thing, which is I find really refreshing. You know, it's and it also when I heard Erickson say that, like, a woman can use absolutely devastating magic just as much as a man can, I was like, well, yeah, that would kind of level the playing field, wouldn't it? You know?
Yeah, I mean, it would possibly lead to, you know, the abuse of non-magic users by magic users in both directions.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can still have like oppression and hierarchy. It's just that it's not, you know, gender based, but like
it's
magic based.
Else. Yeah,
exactly.
So, like, can anyone use magic, or is it like particular people can, or do you have to get taught?
It's never really explained too explicitly, but it seems to be a mixture of natural talent and some teaching
and training. Yeah,
and there are some people in there who seem to have natural talent and not much training, and also sort of the other way around. And how much magic you have access to seems to be a function of your natural talent. Or
and I think, I mean, it's a bit like music, I guess, in that way, where it's like everyone in theory can make music, and there's people who have like a lot of talent and don't need a lot of training, and I have no talent whatsoever, but obviously I can take, you know, singing lessons or guitar lessons or whatever, and reach some level of ability. And I think it's sort of in the middle. And then you obviously have a lot of people that have like no talent and never got the chance to get training because, you know, they're not part of the elite that could possibly afford tutors and whatnot, and then they don't get to do the magic stuff.
Yeah. And some people, there are certainly people in the books that are completely non-magical. Like they don't have any kind of talent or aptitude for it, and they don't do anything. But it's really, really good. Read it, Alicia.
Sold me out. I will pick it up. I will pick it up probably later in August, because July is kind of back for me.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. The main thing I always say, I've said it over and over again, approach it like you would a mystery novel.
Okay.
No
one's ever told me that.
Yeah. Well, it's not a mystery novel.
Okay.
But when you read a mystery novel, you go into it accepting that there will be shit happening that you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And you will find out later. And that's normal for a mystery novel. Nobody complains about that. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a mystery novel. So if you approach it with that kind of mindset, that you won't get everything, it takes a little while to get some things explained to you, get answers to some of your questions. It doesn't get handed to you immediately as soon as it appears. It's not Sanderson.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
It kind of takes until volume 3, until Memories of Ice, to sort of get a rough outline of what is actually going on in the series.
But that's the big story that's going on in the series.
Yeah, for the big, and I think that's like the other parts. Like I remember, like back in the day when I started my channel, it was when Iskar Jarak had this like competition kind of thing. It was like, hey, can you do a synopsis of the Malazan Book of the Fallen without spoilers? And the way I talked about it, like the way I compared it to something like the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by that guy, whose name I just can't remember in this moment because I'm bad at this, but like 18th century. It's a broad history. It's more historiography than fantasy, in that it has all these different storylines, and it just tells you about one specific era in time, and plots come into that have been going on for a while, and you just get sort of like the end of that specific story. And then there are stories that get started during this Gibbons, that's the name, yeah. And then there's storylines that get started halfway through the 10 books, and they just continue after the book, and you don't get that because it covers the history of the Malazan Empire and other empires during these 10 years or whatever it is, roughly. And
But there's also for a normal fantasy reader, so to speak, there's a very right in front of you on the ground story.
Yeah.
There are characters that are doing
Plotty.
things,
Yeah.
and you can just follow them, and the history part of it will sink in over time.
Yeah.
You will
Okay.
get it over time. It's not really the focus. Yeah. Tragedies with fantasy elements, as Erickson has described it. Says
Yeah,
Rogue.
that's one way. He certainly takes a lot from classic Greek tragedy in that regard.
Yeah.
I also say it's very much like a tapestry. You have all these different stories, and they intersect, and there's a larger pattern, to use that Wheel of Time word here. There's a larger pattern and larger story, but you can also just glom onto the one or two characters or plot lines that you really like, and those will be satisfying, and then other stuff will just come up, and you'll sort of the further you get in, the broader the picture gets, and the more sort of involved you get, I think.
Iskar Jarak, who Raf mentioned, was he's still alive, I assume, but he used to run a booktube channel that was only Malazan. And
Okay.
he was awesome. And he used to say, I'm just a regular guy. People have all of these high level theories and understanding of Malazan. I don't necessarily get all of that. I'm here for the fireballs and lasers. And
See, that's kind of where my brain is. I'm if I understand some of the higher parts, that's fun. But I'm here.
There's a lot of
there are a
lasers
lot
and
of
fireballs.
epic as shit lasers and fireballs going on.
Well, someone sold me with dinosaurs, and I'm I'm down.
Dinosaurs with sword arms.
I'm
Not
down
just
with
dinosaurs. Dinosaurs with sword arms.
And dinosaurs that shoot lasers.
And laser dinosaurs and flying city dinosaurs. And
are there cities that also shoot lasers?
Kind of.
Technically,
late,
maybe.
I think. Yeah, late in the book.
Yeah.
Just go with the flow. Rogue says, yeah.
Okay.
Dinosaurs with sword arms, a sword that swallows people, magic and armies and battles and everything. Yeah. It's
big on the fireworks.
Yeah, it's got a lot of
walk among the
extremely
people?
epic shit. No question.
Okay, I guess I'll better get myself another beer.
And what's also interesting, especially if you've already read a bit of fantasy, is he takes a lot of the very stereotypical tropes of fantasy and flips them. So one of the smartest races in Malazan are essentially orcs.
Okay.
They look like orcs. They're green and they have sort of tusks in their mouths and whatever, but they are super powerful sorcerers and extremely smart. And there are magic swords. Pretty much any of the magic swords in Malazan, you do not want to have it. They are horrible, horrible things to have. There are giant talking ravens, as Colton says. Yes.
Huh.
Meters wide or yards wide wingspan. Not only giant talking ravens, but giant talking magic eating ravens. They actually eat magic. There are
walk among people in the story sometimes.
The gods walk among people. Absolutely.
That's a trope just in general that I like.
That's totally normal, but he does have some twists on that as well. The gods are absolutely 100% real. Someone can inherit the position of a god, though. They are not eternal, immortal beings. They can actually be knocked down from their position. There are houses that eat people, sort of. There is some really, really epic stuff in these books. They are awesome. Yeah.
Okay. You sold me.
Cool. So what are you reading now, Britton?
Well, I finished Gog Magog, so now I was trying to make up my mind if I was going to do Black Dahlia and Lonesome Dove, but you mentioned that everyone at the fireside is going to be reading Lonesome Dove, so I'll just join in
Yeah.
with you guys. So I started Black Dahlia from James Ellroy.
Cool.
Isn't that the one that was written by the grandson of one of the detectives? That was.
I don't think so. No,
Because I read that in college. I can't remember the name of it.
James Ellroy is. Well, he calls himself the demon dog of American literature, and well, to
The
be honest, I
demon
can't.
Jeez.
I can't disagree with that. He is a very unapologetic style.
Okay, then that's not who I
For
read in college.
For anyone who wasn't around at the beginning, a quick plug, as Britton mentioned, on the Farside Discord, we are doing a Lonesome Dove read-along starting in July, so in about a week. Everybody is welcome to join. It's sort of got kicked off by me and Joanna, and Tori and I had also been talking about it months ago already. So Joanna, Tori, me, Darko, Britton are in it, and a bunch of other people who don't have channels. Maybe some other people who do, I can't remember. But there is, in the read-along section on the Farside Discord, is a Lonesome Dove channel. So if you're interested in reading Lonesome Dove with us, jump into that channel and let us know. And like I said, we'll be starting in about a week.
I haven't read a Western since my grandfather was alive. That was kind of like our thing.
I haven't read a Western ever, but I am big on Western movies.
Tombstone is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, Tombstone for me is I'm a
classic Western, really. It's the last one where they really unironically went for the like good guys versus bad guys, shooting people. It's pretty awesome. I do enjoy it. Great.
Oh yeah, no, I like it, but I'm a huge Clint Eastwood Western fan.
The spaghetti Westerns?
Not so much though. I mean, I like those. I think those are
I grew up on those.
I think those are a very interesting manifestation of the Western.
Yeah.
And especially how the music and the pictures work together. But
Ennio Morricone was just like so brilliant.
Yeah. No, the ones I like more are honestly like High Plains Drifter, and Thornall was talking about it earlier. He said he doesn't only listen to Raph and read Illuminati, he also grabbed a couple of Westerns because of me.
My grandfather used to read Louis L'Amour. I think I'm saying his name.
Yeah, Louis L'Amour is the classic.
Yeah, I have I have a bunch of his old books. They ended up with me when he passed. So I've never read them because I'm afraid to read them because I'm afraid they'll fall apart.
Right.
But yeah, we used to. I might get the title wrong, but it had Yul Brynner in it. Malevolent Seven.
Magnificent
Seven.
Yeah.
That we watched that every single weekend when I was.
That, interestingly, is a remake of an Akira Kurosawa film.
Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was originally Seven Samurai.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's basically the same story. It's like 7 samurai come into a town that is being threatened by outsiders, and organizes them and teaches them how to defend themselves. And it's exactly the same movie, basically, just samurai instead of gunfighters.
Yeah, it was Westerns
really
and Bruce Lee films for my grandfather.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been kind of pissed and disappointed all my life, because one day when I was in my 20s, I was visiting my grandmother in Florida. And I was at her place. We'd been hanging out. We'd had a big dinner. And after dinner, she was watching TV and I was reading a book. And she looked at the book and she's like, "Oh, what are you reading?" I told her, I don't even remember what it was, but it was science fiction.
Okay.
And I told her it was a science fiction book. And she was like, "Oh, your grandfather was really into science fiction." My grandfather died when I was 6. I hardly, I have like 2 or 3 memories of him.
Yeah.
And I immediately said, "Tell me you still have his books." And she's like, no. I mean, that was like almost 20 years ago. We got rid of his books a long time ago.
Yeah.
Man.
I have one of his original copies of Les Mis, like the big copy. It's a
right.
hardcover. It's huge. Like I can't even lift it. That's how big it is.
Yeah.
And we used to play like the Deadlands role playing game. We used to go like for New Year's, a bunch of us would just like haul up in one of our, my flatmate and me were like living together with like another friend, and we had like 5-6 people over for like 3 days and just like hauled up in that house. And we always, the first night we just like drank cheap whiskey and watched like the original Django or some other like spaghetti western, and then the next 3 days we just like played Deadlands, went to sleep, played Deadlands, went to sleep. And I have like very fond memories of that approach to western.
It's funny, that's become a really popular role-playing genre, like the Weird West, but it's not really much of a movie genre.
I played Oregon Trail as a kid.
Yeah, but Oregon Trail is straight western.
Yeah,
like Deadlands is
I think
western with zombies, and
it's very much like
supernatural.
Wild Wild West, the show, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen High Plains Drifter, Pale Rider, but those are kind of Weird West films, aren't they?
Not at all.
Aren't they kind of supernatural?
I mean, if you really get into what's probably going on but isn't explicitly shown in the movie, the main character is probably dead, and he's actually a ghost of vengeance. But that's not ever said in the movie. He could have survived, like the way it is in the movie. In is it Pale Rider? I think it's Pale Rider. Someone realizes who he is, and that he's a guy that the town beat the crap out of. Or actually, they let bandits beat the crap out of him to the point of death.
Yeah.
And the town just stood back and watched. And he's come back to sort of exact revenge on the town. But it's not really 100% like he definitely died.
The difference between being left for dead and being actually dead can be sort of fudgy, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could come
That
out of the
sounds
film
interesting.
thinking he just like crawled away and survived and came back. But you could also decide that he is a ghost of vengeance. It could be either way. And
It is, as my current obsession Umberto Eco would say, an open work.
Yeah. It's just it's not really it's not like, hey, this is a ghost movie,
okay.
But damn, they're good movies. Really, really good movies.
I love Western films. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's just like a nostalgia thing for me because that's what me and my grandfather used to do, and it's just I love them.
See you, Jerome.
I mean, my favorite Western is Once Upon a Time in the West.
Right.
Because I almost said America. That's a gangster film. Yeah, great film. I actually like it more than the Dollars trilogy, believe it or not. I just love how it comes together. And also that score.
Yeah.
So good.
That's another Ennio Morricone, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That guy was so incredibly like innovative at his time, but like the way he combined classical music scores with electronics, or like early electronics, and rock music elements and whatnot.
He also did The Thing, my favorite horror film of all time. Believe it or not.
Him and Basil Poledouris are like the most underrated. Well, Morricone is not exactly underrated, but like in the fantasy sphere, everyone is like, I listen to soundtracks a lot, and it's always Howard Shore and I don't know, John Williams. And I'm like, or maybe Danny Elfman if people are cool. It's like, no, you got to check out Basil Poledouris and your Morricone.
I was listening to Oingo Boingo before I even knew that Danny Elfman did soundtracks. But like, that was the 80s. There were a lot of music crimes in the 80s. Does anyone know Oingo Boingo?
I do.
Yeah,
That's a
I
funny
figured
name.
Raph would, but
Yeah.
Danny
wouldn't call
Elfman,
it
who
a
was
moose-
famous for doing a lot of soundtracks,
Yeah.
had a band before he became famous for doing soundtracks.
I wouldn't
they
call
were
it a
very-
music crime, though.
Well, I mean, the reason I listened to them and not a lot of other 80s music was they were just doing stuff that was so weird it was fun.
Yeah.
In
a similar way to like Primus and bands like that.
Yeah, or They Might Be Giants.
Yeah.
Just weird. Fornall, I don't think anyone's favorite Western is Wild Wild West. At least I hope not.
I enjoyed watching it as a kid, but as an adult, no.
Yeah, it's a crap film. I can imagine it's fun for kids, but
Yeah.
It
it's
was like
otherwise
I
a
was
pretty
like 8
garbage
years old
film.
when it came out, so I was like, all right,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
Wow.
sure.
Poor Will Smith. He always picks really shit roles, or he often
I
Some,
really like
sometimes,
shitty
man,
roles.
yeah.
Kevin Kline in that movie. He was hysterical. The rest of it, eh.
Yeah, overall kind of an average movie.
Yeah.
No, I mean the old Clint Eastwood westerns, or also going back and watching the things that have been remade, like 310 to Yuma.
That
310
one
to
was
Yuma, the
the
new
remake
one.
was pretty good.
The remake was excellent, but like I watched that and I was like,
True
okay,
Grit.
now I want to watch 310 to Yuma, the original, which I think is black and white.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's black and white, so it's pretty old. And True Grit, yeah, the original True Grit with John Wayne.
It's a solid one. I actually like the remake more, but
I did too.
like Jeff
I mean, if you go
Bridges
back and
as
watch
Dexter.
John Wayne now, it all looks
So-
really cheesy.
no one can say "fill your hands, you son of a bitch" like John Wayne can. Like, I'm sorry, you can't. But aside from that, like, I think True Grit's, I think the remake's actually a lot better.
Yeah.
But I do love the Coen brothers, so I might be
Yeah.
a bit biased there.
I'm a big Coen Brothers fan as well.
Some of
And
their
their
films
True
like,
Grit
don't-
was very good.
I
Yeah.
got to see I saw 310 to Yuma, like the remake at like a sneak preview, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. And then I saw the old one, and I was like, wow, this is even more awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Although
No,
you know,
310
it
to
got
Yuma
Christian
is-
Bale being once again incredibly skinny and sallow, and
Yeah, yeah.
Also,
Um,
going back to Once Upon a Time in the West, Henry Fonda plays a villain in that movie, and he's fucking terrifying. It's
True.
really good.
I
True.
don't think I've seen that one.
Yeah. Thornall throwing out High Noon here. Yep.
I saw that for a class. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's kind of hilarious. The main bad guy's name is Frank Miller. I snicker at that.
John Wayne's best quote: "Life is hard. Harder if you are stupid."
Well, I have to side with the rogue here because John Wayne, trash human being,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolute
Yeah.
trash human being.
Not admirable as a human being, but he was a pretty good cowboy.
Yeah.
He did.
Usually when he's with John Ford, that's where you really get to see like the best of his like westerns. Also, I like Hondo a lot. I don't know if anyone's seen Hondo here. That's kind of
Yeah.
I have seen Hondo, but it's been a while.
Hmm.
Fits like sitting on top of my printer for some reason, but which is a scanner on top, so it's flat. But it always creaks and cracks when she's climbing on top of it.
going back to Clint Eastwood. I also like Unforgiven a lot, but that's kind of
Unforgiven's great. I mean, that's definitely a deconstruction of the Western,
Yeah.
but it's such a good movie. It's so well done.
might be the most realistic, like most authentic feeling Western film I've ever seen. Even though I'm like, wouldn't say I'm an expert on the Wild West, but none of it feels like stylized.
Like in Unforgiven, there is nothing nice
No.
anywhere. Like nothing is good, nothing is clean,
Yeah.
nothing is like, and that is very much how I imagine life would have been out there, because I've
Like, there's
traveled
a
a lot
scene-
out there in that area, and it's rough just from the landscape. I mean, it would be a really rough place to live in the 19th century. Really, really rough. Or
Like there's a
even
scene
18th.
where Clint Eastwood shoots a guy, and the guy's like, "Oh man, I'm real thirsty." Like he doesn't die instantly.
Yeah.
It's really awful.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ada, I'm with you there. That's why I want to be like Winnie the Pooh, who is my absolute role model.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, a lot of stupid people I've met don't seem to worry nearly as much as a lot of smart people I know. And don't seem to take things quite so personally or seriously or whatever. So yeah, it may not actually be true. The Quick and the Dead. The Quick and the Dead was fun. It was
Yeah,
it was
The Quick and
kind
the
of a
Dead is a
stupid
good one.
movie in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
but it was
It's
fun.
Sam Raimi, dude. Like he's the king.
Yeah, I mean, when someone
Yeah.
gets shot and the sun shines through the bullet hole, and you can see the bullet hole in their shadow on the ground, I'm just like, yeah, it's maybe overdoing it slightly. That's not how bullet holes work.
They do in Sam Raimi country.
Yeah, apparently. I mean, if you were using a really very sawn off, very close range shotgun, you'd probably be able to get some light through that hole. But like a pistol, no.
Probably not.
But
I
very
watched a
Sam
bunch
Raimi.
of like westerns in those like classic sneaks that we used to have, and it's like I just don't know which ones they were. There was one like with a lot of like war on like the border to Mexico, and it was incredibly brutal, but it was also like a black and white one, I think, and it's still
Okay.
and it had a machine gun in it, which was like wow, it's like very like late
Okay.
early 1900s Sten gun, not Sten gun, the Maxim gun,
Yeah.
kind of late western, and it was incredibly bleak, but I have no idea what it was.
Okay.
But yeah, no one was the good guy in that one. Everyone died.
Yeah. And Deadwood. Deadwood
Yeah.
as a series was
Yeah.
extremely good. It was very sad that it got canceled.
Deadwood was one of my favorite shows, period.
Yeah.
Some of the best
good.
dialogue I've ever heard in a
Yeah.
Ian McShane in the Deadwood is just fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like Swearingen is one of my all-time favorite shady characters.
Oh,
in
it's so
anything.
great.
And also the name Swearingen.
I know it's so.
And he was a real guy too. That's a real freaky.
Yeah. Thoughts on Django Unchained?
I love it.
I've
Yeah,
never
I
seen
watched it. I thought it was all right. I think when I watched it though, I was a little bit over Tarantino's stylization.
I'm not a fan of him. The only movie that I actually like is Pulp Fiction.
I liked his early films. I liked Reservoir Dogs. I liked Pulp
Reservoir Dogs
Fiction.
is really cool.
Yeah, Reservoir Dogs is
Mr.
great.
Reservoir Dogs is actually my favorite one that he's done.
What's the other one which I think is between Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction? Truth and Lies.
True Romance? He
True-
wrote that movie.
True Romance? Yeah, I think it's True Romance. But yeah, Reservoir Dogs was awesome. I thought Pulp Fiction was great, but
Quentin Tarantino just seems like an asshole too. Like I'm just like, dude, you just seem like an ass.
yeah,
Possible.
yeah. I mean, I don't generally care too much, because if somebody makes a movie, I am gonna watch that movie. I am not
Yeah.
gonna sit down with that guy and have a beer. It's very unlikely anyway. It's nice when you know that they're good people, or when you meet them. Like I met Wim Wenders,
Mhm.
and he was super nice. He was a really, really nice
Yeah.
guy, and that was cool. It was cool that he was a nice guy, and he actually took the time to stop and talk with me for a minute. But
I have a beer with Martin Scorsese. I asked him about
there you go.
it. I asked-
I
My
don't know.
dad met Spike Lee in an elevator in Memphis, and he said he was really cool. They got stuck in an elevator together in Memphis.
Okay, that sounds like the setup for a short story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And apparently my dad's best friend who was there didn't believe it was Spike Lee, and Spike Lee turns around and goes, "Yeah, it's me."
That's cool. I mean, like, so the thing with Django Unchained, I think the biggest problem was that it came right after Inglourious Bastards, and it also had Christoph Waltz in it, and that kind of made, I think, took away part of the impact because it was
feels
very close in style and everything to that.
yeah, and the style that Tarantino is doing, it feels like he's been almost parodying himself for 20 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like ever since Pulp Fiction, which felt at the time fresh and original and different
Mhm.
compared to a lot of what was around. Now there's so much Tarantino around. It's like, oh, this is like Pulp Fiction, but it's set in World War II. And this is like Pulp Fiction,
Yeah.
but it's set in the Wild West with a black guy. And
I also really enjoyed the Hateful Eight.
yeah, I kind of liked it. It wasn't great. I wasn't even being a big Western fan. I don't know. I didn't get into it
No fun at all.
too much.
I think
Sorry.
the original Django had way more impact on me than Django Unchained. I'll say this, but like
I haven't
maybe
seen
also
it.
because it like for its time, it's incredibly brutal
Okay.
in like the way it does like violence. I think is very impressive. It's like one of those first like sort of like spaghetti western before they come sort of like almost like a parody in a way,
Yep.
and it's just like so like straight up just like violence. And it's like, wow, this is rough.
I have not seen it. I didn't even know there was an original.
I didn't know.
Django
either.
is an Italian one from like it's like late 50s, early 60s.
Okay.
I heard The Great Silence is really good.
And I think it has like one of those like it had a huge impact on Tarantino because like one of the key scenes in that original Django movie is about someone cutting someone's ear off. And as someone who has seen Reservoir Dog, you might
Yeah, that's-
remember.
Mhm.
That's a very visceral Reservoir Dogs scene.
Yeah, that's burned in
Yeah.
my
Trust
brain.
Yeah, that was hard.
I was a
especially-
little kid and my dad was watching it, and that scene specifically is burned in my brain. I was like 4 or 5.
and it's
Yeah.
done in a way that it's really hard to avoid.
Yeah, but I think
it's not
it's a
like an
deliberate-
off-camera thing or a oblique angle thing. It's like straight up there it
Right
is,
there, you know what he's doing.
and
There's
that was
no.
that was
That's like-
pretty intense at the time, especially back then. There weren't many mainstream movies that were that brutal.
I hate CSI.
Brian's here. Beltube. He casts charm person on me. That is a joke because he just started playing Baldur's Gate 3, and we have been talking about it.
Yeah.
Caleb, you're right.
I'm
Jackie Brown is
immune,
actually a
Brian.
very good movie.
Yeah, Caleb loves Jackie Brown.
Oh, I thought you
I-
said Jack Bauer. I'm like, I'm shocked you would even like 24.
I
Rap.
was
thought you'd get all pissed
bit
off
bored.
at all the violations of like, people's rights and stuff.
And that like the ear scene in Reservoir Dogs feels to me like I saw Reservoir Dogs before I saw Django, and it's like, oh, this is what he's referencing there, because obviously, Tarantino being a very postmodern director, a lot of the stuff that he does is deliberate references of older stuff.
Oh
in all
yeah, and
kinds of ways.
he's said very, very openly that he's a huge movie buff, and
Yeah.
he's watched a million of the old movies, and
Yeah.
Colton says Mr. Pink is the best character in Reservoir Dogs. Changed my
Mr.
mind.
Pink.
I really like Mr. White, but yeah, Mr. Pink's Steve Buscemi's great.
Yeah,
I
I've
met
always
him once. He was
wondered
very nice.
if that's a deliberate like joke in for Terry Pratchett in what's it called, The Thief of Time. There's a bunch of creatures, and I don't want to spoil anything here, but there's a group of people that may be the bad guys, and they need names, sort of, to they need to make up names for
need
themselves.
bad guy cover names.
They need bad guy cover names, and they all choose colors, and they start with like Mr. White and Black, and I don't know, a couple more of those. So it's like, is Pratchett deliberately making a Reservoir Dogs?
That sounds a
joke
lot
here.
like a Reservoir Dogs reference.
It also kind of fits within the larger. It makes sense that they're choosing that within the story world, but it also, Pratchett is someone who does a lot of like movie references in a lot of his books.
Yeah. No, that sounds very much like a Reservoir Dogs reference. Guys, I am starting to get tired because it's starting to get late here. I might
Hmm.
call it. We didn't have any sprints. We had enough interesting conversation to just blather on for a couple of hours, which is cool.
And I have to go to the job center tomorrow, and we'll see if
Awesome.
they tell me that I don't get any money because I smell of beer.
Brush your teeth before you go.
Get your ass beaten, please.
And wash-
Fahne haben.
Make sure. Oh yeah, you're referring to that book, to that song. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the band that was the concert I went to on Friday.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. You mentioned you were maybe going to go to that, and I assume it was good.
It was a lot of fun.
You have the scars to prove it.
Yeah. It was really fun. The other band had like a really fun German name. They called Das Aus der Jugend.
Das was?
Das Aus der Jugend.
Das aus der Jugend.
Like youth clubs are often called Das Haus der Jugend.
Ah, okay. Yeah. See, I never really
If you
experienced
drop the H, and suddenly it becomes like the end of youth, or like the
the end of
the
the youth. Yeah.
end of the youth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that case, it was a really funny joke.
I had a funny experience this weekend. for the first time in decades, since iTunes first came out and broke the album, like
Mhm.
digital music completely broke the album. Like you can listen to any song you want, anytime you want. You don't have to buy an album. You don't have to listen to an album and all of that. And since that started, I have not listened to an album, like just sat down and really listened all the way through. And I had a nostalgic moment. First of all, in Joanna's channel on the Discord, I'm going to forget who recommended this. I think it was Max Garfield, posted a video, a YouTube video, which is a really, really interesting kind of analysis of the Who's Tommy album,
Oh, I love Tommy.
which is like a story album,
Yeah.
and compare and contrast with The Wall by Pink Floyd, which
Yeah.
is also a big sort of story album.
Yeah.
And I realized that I've never listened to Tommy. I mean, there are a lot of the songs on it, obviously,
Really?
you know, but I've never listened to it as an album in sequence. Like
Which makes sense with like a
I never
concept
could-
album. You kind of want to do that, like
you need to get a concept album beginning to end, right?
never-
And I never listened to it. And I sat down yesterday and put on Spotify and my headphones and closed my eyes and just sat back for an hour and 15 minutes and listened to the entire Tommy album.
Tommy's fantastic.
Yeah. It was an experience that I really haven't had in a long time. Kind of nostalgic because I used to, when I was a kid, I used to sit in the recliner, listen to my mom's albums with headphones on. But my mom's albums were like Bee Gees, like Saturday Night Fever, and Billy Joel, and like some really old school stuff. And it was just
You
very
go wrong with the Bee Gees.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd get into the Bee Gees anymore now, but listening to Tommy reminded me of that. So then I sat down and listened to The Stranger by Billy Joel, which is a 1977 album with some amazing songs on it. He was such an amazing pianist and songwriter.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good stuff.
You know, I appreciate the suggestion, but it may shock you. I don't have any weed at home.
Oh my God.
That actually shocked me. That actually shocks me, Raph. You
Why?
seem like someone who smokes a doobie once in a while.
The last time I had weed at home was when I was hosting a Russian band for a festival that I organized, and they asked for weed, and that's when I got them weed. And I have smoked weed, and I will definitely not say no, but I have never bought weed to smoke on my own. It's just not something I do that much.
This is a misconception, Ida. We do not have weed at the corner shop in Germany. There might be a guy on the corner you could buy it from, but not at the corner shop. It's not that legalized. Anyway, I was
I'm gonna get
trying
something to
to
eat. So
cut
work it
off.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a smart plan. I might continue reading a book called Umberto Eco, The Da Vinci Code and the Intellectual in the Age of Popular Culture.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, yeah.
I am probably going to do something far less enlightening and go binge more Lost.
Go watch TV.
Exactly.
Is that the point where we tell you to get lost?
Exactly. I'm going to go get lost. Someone should do a supercut from every time someone in the show says you're lost, because it happens a lot. I was never conscious of it, but somebody says to somebody else, you're more lost than you know, or you're lost and you don't know it, or whatever.
Yeah.
As
probably
essential.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you three for joining me. Thank you everybody in the chat for joining. It is always a pleasure. I wish you all a lovely Sunday evening and lovely week. And I will see you next weekend. Oh, I'll repeat it. Next Saturday at the same time that the pub starts, Evie and maybe Dan and I are doing a live chat about A Boy's Life by Robert McCammon. Not A Boy's Life, just Boy's Life by Robert McCammon. Evie and I read it together. Dan is reading it at the moment and may join us, not sure yet. It would be great to see a bunch of you on Saturday as well, if you can. And if Colton doesn't show up, it's confirmation that he's a fake fan. with that, I will leave you.
Sounds
For
good.
the
It's my
Sunday.
birthday next Saturday, so probably I'll do something else.
Yeah, you'll probably have things to drink and whatnot.
Happy birthday.
Happy
Yeah.
birthday, Ref.
Happy birthday in advance.
How old are you gonna
Yeah.
be? If you don't mind my asking, anyway.
Antediluvian.
All right.